Hi, everyone. Oh, hi, Elizabeth. I would just wait a few more minutes for more people to come.
Okie dokie.
Elizabeth, you can start whenever you want. I have this recording and I enabled screen sharing also, if that's helpful.
Okay, sorry, I was just trying to pull something up really quickly. All right, so it's good afternoon. It's like 3 o'clock.
Elizabeth, I can't hear you. Can you hear me? Can anybody hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, I think
Hello?
I had my mute button on from before. Sorry, we're good. I'm going to shut up.
Okay, so my name is Elizabeth. I'm with National Tenant Network. I apologize, my voice is a little weird. I was at the NAR, National Association of Realtors Conference in Orlando, and we got free tickets to Universal Studios. And I was on a bunch of roller coasters and lost my voice for the whole week. Tells you how long it's been since I've been on a roller coaster. And also I am suffering from allergies as well. So I apologize that you have to listen to me. But in any event, I am the account executive for National Tenant Network. And in the chat box, I just want to put in our phone number for NTN client services. It's 1-800-422-8299 extension 4. And also our office hours are Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 6 p.m. and Saturdays we are open from 11 a.m. to 4 p.m. Even though the office is closed on Sundays and at night, we do have people who run and process reports up until they go to bed, and we're right in Jersey as well. So we're here, we're local. If you ever have an emergency and it's outside of the hours that our office is open, I am here. So you can always call me at the same number, and you can reach me at extension 142, and that will go directly to my cell phone. If I don't answer for whatever reason, just give me leave me a voicemail and I will call you back as soon as I can. Otherwise, you can always feel free to email me, and my email address is elizabeth.oka@ntnnj.com. Just note that my name is spelled with an S, not a Z. If you send it to the Z, you're going to get it bounced back and I will not get the message. So just contact information in case you need to reach out to us. So I'm going to start today. In case you're not aware of the New Jersey Fair Chance and Housing Act. So NTN has always provided comprehensive reports. We are a nationwide company. We do have multiple offices across the company, so every office operates in its own region. That way we feel we can provide better customer service. With respect to housing court records, we manage our own database, so we know what's in what's coming in every single week from every housing court across New Jersey, for example. If we're missing anything, we can call the housing court right away and get that. Also, as far as local laws, there's federal things like fair housing, right, that you have to comply with. But then there's also local, different laws that you have to think about, like the New Jersey Fair Chance and Housing Act, that affects how you handle criminal information. And just so you know, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Philadelphia, all have different screening laws at this point now. So that's why it's really important to make sure that you're working with a company that understands what you can and what you can't do in your area. So I wanted to start off just with the AG memo that came out. Hopefully you guys are familiar with this. Before, it used to be just the law against discrimination. But this came out and it went out to all the property owners last year in December. And it basically says the New Jersey Real Estate Commission requires that every licensed broker or salesperson with whom you list your property to give you a copy of this notice. The purpose is to comply with the New Jersey law against discrimination and the Fair Chance and Housing Act, effective January 1st, 2022. So I'm sure you probably have this. If you do, you can nod and I'll go through this really quickly. If nobody's nodding, I don't see anybody nodding, then the big things that changed is that it does include the laws against discrimination, but it also includes the Fair Chance and Housing Act now. So everything I'm going to go over with you right now is all in this letter, and that's why the New Jersey Real Estate Commission wants you to give this to the landlords, at the time of listing, and have them sign it, that they are aware of this law, right? And they require you or your broker to sign it, and they also require the owner to sign it. The previous memo, I was told, is something that you would just provide to the landlord. Well, now they want you to sign this. So you would have them sign it and you would keep it on file. Again, if there was anything brought up, the tenant said they felt that you didn't comply with this law and they were, they didn't get the apartment as a result, probably the first question is going to be, okay, well, were you aware of this? And if the landlord didn't sign any document and you as the agent didn't have them sign it, then that could be headed down the wrong path. So you want to make sure they do sign that. So if we go to the law itself, I'll try to make this as painless as possible, but it's kind of painful, but not too bad. So overview of the Fair Chance and Housing Act, the what, when, and who of it. Just so you know, this law was signed last year in June. Governor Murphy signed it into the Fair Chance and Housing Act, and it basically bars housing providers from asking about criminal history on housing applications in most instances. And the Fair Chance and Housing Act is the first law of its kind in the country, go New Jersey, I guess, and is intended to ensure people with past criminal histories have a fair shot at accessing safe and affordable housing. So the spirit of this law is a good one, and then it's really trying to help people who did have, maybe made a poor decision in the past and have a criminal record, trying to help them find housing. But at the same time too, it does change the process, but the spirit of the law is a good one. And the bill did go into effect in January 1st, 2022, so earlier this year. Now, who has to comply with this law? Basically, housing providers who are subject to this FCHA include landlords, owners, lessors, sublessors, assignees, or their agents. So they included you guys in there, or any other person receiving or entitled to receive rents or benefits for the use or occupancy of any rental dwelling unit. Under the FCHA, a rental dwelling unit means a home offered for rent by a housing provider for residential purposes, except for a dwelling unit in an owner-occupied premises of no more than 4 dwelling units. So this law applies to everyone except for any properties that have no more than 4 dwelling units and is owner occupied. So it has to be both. It has to be no more than 4 dwelling units and owner occupied. I had a lot of agents who would say, oh, my landlord's exempt because this is only a 2-unit property. And I'd say, well, does the landlord live on the other side? They're like, nope. And I'm like, okay, well then no, they're not exempt. They're not exempt. It's only if the landlord lives on the property and it's no more than 4 units. It has to be both. So the ban the box. If you're familiar with the term ban the box is used in the employment world a lot. And what ban the box means is that anytime somebody applies for employment, before a future employer could run criminal information or ask about criminal information from the prospective new hire, they basically have to do some other kind of analysis, whether it's an interview or if they're going to run anything other than criminal information. But they basically cannot run criminal or ask about criminal past before they have given some kind of conditional approval or some kind of conditional letter to let them know that they're going to be employed. So this bill is basically a ban the box, but it's for housing. So therefore, the housing provider cannot ask about the criminal history prior to issuing a conditional offer of approval. There are two exceptions to the questions that could be asked. One is, has the tenant ever been convicted of drug-related criminal activity related to the manufacture or production of methamphetamine on the premises of federally assisted housing, which is extremely specific. And the second one is the tenant subject to lifetime registration under a state sex offender registry? Those are the only two questions regarding criminal that could be asked up front. Now, you guys are going to be using NTN, and what we have done is we have removed all criminal questions from the front end of the application, and that's what was advised to us by the New Jersey Apartment Association's attorneys. I'll touch on the sex offense side of it. Because there is this one exception, just so you know, when you get the initial reports from NTN, you are going to get the sex offender registry because the attorney said that is okay, but otherwise, no other criminal information. Now, what happens if an applicant volunteers information? Well, while a landlord can't ask about criminal history prior to a conditional offer, an applicant could provide evidence to the housing provider demonstrating inaccuracies within the applicant's criminal record or evidence of rehabilitation or other mitigating factors. So in short, you cannot ask about it, but the applicant could voluntarily provide it. So they might come to your office and say, I'm looking for a rental, but I want to be honest, I do have a criminal record. In that case, the New Jersey Apartment Association attorneys said that the landlord should accept the information, but not consider it until allowed to do so, which is after the conditional offer is made. I'm not an attorney, but I would probably, if I was you and the tenant came in and said, hey, I want to be honest, I do have a criminal record, but I'm looking for a place to live, I'd probably say, you know what, that's information I don't need to know. We comply with the New Jersey Fair Chance and Housing Act, and that's information that we would get at a later point, but we do not need that information at this point now. I'd basically probably try to shut it down, because if you accept it, how do you prove that it wasn't passed on or, considered when the decision was made? Now, when it comes to the basic steps to running a tenant screening in New Jersey, so before this law went into play, it was pretty simple. Like the tenant, you would send the tenant a link to apply, they would fill it out, you'd get a report, you'd just request a report, and you'd get all the reports back, send them over to the landlord. Landlord makes a decision and you're done. Now with this new law, it's not too bad, even though it seems like a lot of work. It hasn't been too bad for most of my agents that are working with me. But it's really turned into a two-step process. So basically what you're doing is you're running everything minus criminal first. The landlord has to make the decision, and then they would give the conditional offer letter if they want to move forward with that tenant, which is contingent upon the criminal check. And then at that point, once the letter has been issued, then you could run the criminal report. So it's like a two-tiered screening approach. And so the basic steps, just so you know, as far as the application, there's an online application link. And it does have the required disclosure language regarding the Fair Chance and Housing Act in it. You would send that over to the tenant. Once the tenant has applied, you request the reports from NTN. NTN is going to issue you just the initial reports that you're allowed to have. You send them over to the landlord makes a decision. If they decide to deny, there should be an adverse action letter that can be used at that point to let the tenant know, unfortunately, they didn't get the apartment. Or if the landlord decides to move forward, then there will be a template that you could use either from NTN or from the Division of Civil Rights. The landlord could sign that, letting the tenant know they would like to move forward, contingent upon criminal. At that point, once the conditional offer letter has been presented, then you could run the criminal report. And also what NTN is recommending is the use of a secondary application at that point. So basically a paper application just asking the tenant have you ever been convicted of a crime, and allowing them to provide any mitigating information. I'll talk a little bit more about that in a little bit. When the criminal report comes back, if there's no criminal information, the landlord would just move forward with a lease, because they conditionally, you conditionally approve the tenant based on criminal. So if there's no criminal, you're moving forward with a lease. If there is criminal records that do come back, then the landlord has to perform an individualized assessment if the criminal convictions are found within the allowable look back periods. And I'll talk about the look back periods in 1 second, but the landlord will then either approve or they're going to deny. If they approve, they move forward with the lease. If they deny, they're going to use a specific withdrawal notice that was provided by the Division on Civil Rights, or NTN also has a template that can be used. Okay, so these look back periods is for your knowledge and for the landlords, because remember, you are a housing provider, so you should know this as well. So there are maximum look back periods that New Jersey created for the criminal records. So the look back periods are as follows. They basically, New Jersey categorized the crimes either by degree level, or they have 8 specified heinous crimes. Heinous crimes are your most egregious crimes. If we flip forward, it's murder, sexual assault, aggravated sexual assault, human trafficking, kidnapping, arson, causing or permitting a child to engage in prohibited sexual acts or in the simulation of such acts, and any crimes that result in lifetime registration on a state sex offender registry. So those are all the heinous crimes, and the heinous crimes have an unlimited look back period. So if you murdered someone yesterday or you murdered someone 85 years ago, it's something that the landlord can consider. Now, all other crimes are categorized by degree. So in New Jersey, 1st degree is the most severe, followed by 2nd and 3rd, and then 4th degree. So 1st degree crimes have a 6-year look back period. 2nd and 3rd degree crimes have a 4-year look back period, and 4th degree crimes have a 1-year look back period. And just note that the look back period begins from the date the conviction was issued, or if the conviction resulted in a prison sentence, from when that sentence concluded. So if, for example, somebody committed a 1st degree crime in 2010 and they didn't do any jail time for whatever reason, 2010 is outside of the 6 years. So therefore, a landlord could not consider that record. However, if somebody committed a 1st degree crime and they were sentenced to jail and the release date was 2010, 2010 is within 6 years. So a landlord could consider that record. So it goes by the date the conviction was issued or the date of release from incarceration, whichever is more recent is going to be, what you would use to see whether it would fall within the allowable look back periods. Now, one of the questions NTN had to the lawmakers when this law was passed was, how is a landlord supposed to know what degree what degree level each crime is? Because on a criminal report, it never lists what the degree levels are. So what New Jersey did was they came out with a master spreadsheet on their Attorney General website. And what they did was they listed all of the possible crimes that could happen along with all the statute codes. So the landlords could go here and they could look up when they get the criminal report, they can look up the different offenses, or by statute code, and they can find out what degree level it is, and then they would know whether or not they can consider it because they could look at the look back periods. Another question NTN had to the landlords or to the New Jersey lawmakers was, what do we do for out-of-state crimes? Because New Jersey categorizes crimes by degree level, but other states don't. So what are landlords supposed to do? And what New Jersey's answer was this, basically this addendum or something, that chapter 9298, which basically says that what happens with out-of-state records is that the landlord will have to look at the website or the criminal site for that particular state, and they'll have to see what is the maximum allowable sentence for that particular crime. If it's over 10 years, it's considered a 1st degree in New Jersey. If it's between 3 to 10 years, it's considered 2nd or 3rd degree in New Jersey. And if it's between 1 and 3 years, then it's a 4th degree crime. And anything under 1 year is considered a disorderly persons offense or a petty disorderly persons offense and can't be considered. So how is NTN helping with this as well? Well, as our baseline screening, when we provide the criminal reports, we do take a look at it. If it's a heinous crime, we're going to leave it on the report because we know that the landlord can look at those unlimited. For all other crimes, anything over 7 years, our researchers are removing from the reports because we know that if it's not heinous, you can only go up to 6 years. As 7 years and beyond, we're automatically filtering those out. So that's how we're cleaning up the reports. But with the remaining records, your landlords are going to have to determine whether or not those records fall within the allowable look back periods. Now, they can ask their attorneys. I have heard some attorneys charging $200, $400, $700 to do the research, especially when somebody comes back with like a 5-page criminal history. Just so you know, NTN, our researchers will review the information, and we will clean up the reports completely for your landlords, and the cost is $15. So 15. So if your landlords don't want to do the research and they don't want to pay several $100s from for their attorneys to do it, just note that NTN will do it, but we do charge $15. I told them they should charge more, but they didn't. It's $15. So I would take advantage of that if I was a landlord. And if that ever comes up, just feel free to reach out to me or my office, and we'll be able to help accept the payment and clean up the report for your landlords. Okay, so if we dive a little bit deeper into the process, the step one, just so you know, the Division of Civil Rights does require that the disclosure, all of this has to be disclosed on an application prior to accepting an application or any kind of fee. So NTN has that built into the online application link. And we also ask the tenants to sign consent that, yes, we did receive the New Jersey Fair Chance in Housing disclosure notice. So that's part of the process to make sure that we're capturing that. And also we removed all the criminal background questions because you can't do that anymore. As far as the first step, we'll go over the request process. You're just going to request the reports as needed directly from NTN. So the first step will be everything minus the criminal. You're going to just take that, send it to your landlord. They're going to make a decision whether they're going to move forward with a conditional offer or if they're going to deny the tenant. If they deny the tenant, then there should be an adverse action letter that can be used at that point. Otherwise, they could use the template for the conditional offer letter. And also, I did mention the use of a secondary application. So I'll send this to Lauren as well, so you have access to it. But basically what this is it's a secondary paper application. Why do we recommend this? It's not a requirement by DCR, so you don't have to use it. However, NTN was wondering, with the law, it says that the Division on Civil Rights requires the landlord to allow the tenant to provide mitigating information, any evidence of rehabilitation efforts, evidence of good tenancy following release from incarceration, if they have any character references, the DCR says that the landlord or the housing provider must allow the tenants the opportunity to provide this information. So NTN, we don't know how you would prove that as a housing provider, you allowed for this opportunity unless you had some kind of paper trail. That if a tenant came back later on and said, I worked with, Lauren, and she never gave me the opportunity to provide mitigating information, Lauren could then say, oh, wait, hold up. We got the secondary application that allowed you to enter in all the information. You either didn't fill it out or you didn't put any information on here, right, by the due date. So that way, the secondary application is something that you can keep on file, your landlord can keep on file, just in case anyone comes back. The other reason why this secondary application is important is because it asks the question, have you ever been convicted of a crime? So remember, the New Jersey law says you can ask that question, but after the conditional offer letter has been presented. Well, why is this important? It's important because if you ask, have you ever been convicted of a crime? And the tenant says, no, I've never been convicted of a crime. And then you run the criminal report and a criminal record comes back, the landlord could deny for untruthful information on the application, not even getting into the criminal side of things. So that's where it's really important, we think, to use this as a secondary application. When you go to process the criminal report, remember that, if the criminal record is found within the allowable look back period, the landlord's going to have to do an individualized assessment in a non-discriminatory manner. And what does that mean? Well, the Division on Civil Rights did give some guidance. Basically, they say that the landlord should concentrate on these things as they're doing the assessment. They should be looking at things like the nature and severity of the criminal offense, the age of the applicant at the time of the occurrence of the criminal offense, the time which has elapsed since the occurrence of the criminal offense, any information produced by the applicant or produced on the applicant's behalf in regard to the applicant's rehabilitation and good conduct since the occurrence of the criminal offense, the degree to which the criminal offense, if it reoccurred, would negatively impact the safety of the housing provider's other tenants and property, and whether the criminal offense occurred on or was connected to a property that was rented or leased by the applicant. So basically, the Division of Civil Rights wants landlords to really hone in on these areas when it comes to the criminal offenses that come back, right? And then if they do decide to accept, they just move forward with the lease. But if they decide to deny based on this individualized assessment, then the landlord does have to provide a withdrawal notice. And there is a template, both NTN, I'll provide a copy to Lauren of ours, and the DCR also has a withdrawal notice that the landlord can use. But it does require the landlord to write with specificity the reasons for the denial. So landlord's going to have to fill that out, and it does have to allow the tenants the opportunity to appeal. One note about our withdrawal notice is that we not only have language on ours about the FCHA, but also the FCRA. So since you're running credit, we think it's important to include the required language per the Fair Credit Reporting Act and not just the Fair Chance and Housing Act. But you can review it obviously with your attorneys and figure out which letter you'd like to use. The only other thing too is that it says in the law that the landlord must provide tenants with the opportunity to request all information used to screen the tenant, including information considered in criminal and non-criminal screening. So the applicant must request the information within 30 days of the denial, and the landlord or the housing provider must provide the applicant the information within 10 days of receiving the request. So in most cases, if the tenant is denied for anything but criminal and they say, oh, can I have a copy of the report? You can always send them right to NTN, to our 800 number, and they can request a report directly from us and we will release it. That's the least amount of risk, because if you release the report and there's no law requiring you to, and something negative happens later on down the line, you would be on the hook for that. So it's better to have NTN release it. However, in the case with criminal denials, it is written in the law that if there's a criminal denial and the tenant asks for a copy of the report within 30 days, that you do have a legal obligation to give them a copy of the reports within 10 days of that request. So that's the only time you would release a copy of the reports that were run. As far as what I'll send Lauren after this, there is a disclosure language. It looks something like this. It just gives all the same information that's on that AG memo. The conditional offer letter looks something like this. The landlord would have to fill this out and send it over to the prospective tenant if they're going to move forward after the initial assessment. The supplemental application looks something like this, and we do have a return by date. And what the attorneys for the New Jersey Apartment Association recommended was to give the tenants like 3 business days or 5 business days, but something reasonable that they could fill it out, but also something reasonable that the landlords aren't waiting a month, before they can rent out their unit. I'll go over the request form in a second. Otherwise, the criminal denial letter looks something like this. Again, if the landlord denies, they would have to fill this out with specificity. So it's not something that you, the agent, should do. We will also provide Lauren with a step-by-step, and if you need it, we will also provide a flow chart with pictures and colors and arrows and boxes, which is always sometimes easier to understand. So that, in a big, huge nutshell, is the Fair Chance and Housing Act and kind of why we set things up the way we do. Now, when it comes to running a NTN report, it's pretty simple. I will share this with Lauren afterwards, but there's really 2 steps to running a report. Basically, all you need is this link right here that I'm highlighting, and you'll see there's an attachment for a request form. So all you have to do is, whenever you have any tenants who are looking to apply, you could just send them this link. You can also send them this NTN number in case they have trouble filling it out. Don't let it be your problem. Just send them over to NTN. We'll help walk them through the application. We know the application like in our sleep, so we'll be able to walk them through a lot faster. And you can also add it to your listing, as long as it's permissible by the MLS. Usually they have a note, agent remarks or agent notes section, and they'll put it inside the notes there, just saying, in case you need the link, please contact agent, or here's the link to apply. It's up to you whether you want to share it. A lot of agents I know just put a note in there, if you need the link to apply, please contact me. And that way they can keep track of where they're sending the links to. And Lauren also added a note that all of these documents, along with a recording of this entire training, will be found in the training folders, which she'll send links to everyone once the video is fully downloaded. So just FYI. And so when you send this over, just so you know, if I click on this link, it just takes the person to the landing page. It does let them know there is a $40 fee per person. It also tells them that anyone over the age of 18 is required to fill out the application. Why anyone over the age of 18? It's a very easy, from a fair housing perspective. Once you're an adult, you get screened. If you're not an adult, you don't get screened, rather than picking and choosing who gets screened. Like, you can't say, well, this family looks great, you don't need to screen, but this family, I don't know, and you can't do that. Fair housing says what you do for one, you do for all. Everybody should have an equal opportunity to apply. So that's why you really want to make sure that you have a very fair housing friendly way of processing who gets screened and who doesn't. And also, just FYI, there have been a number of situations that have popped up, but one that comes to mind with this is, I had a mom that tried to apply with her son, or did apply with her son, and she told the agent that there's no need to run her son because he's not working and he's not paying the rent. And the agent said, okay. So she ran the mom. The mom passed, and they put them onto a property of 300 families. And over time, the other surrounding tenants noticed that the son was hanging out at the playgrounds and schoolyards. And somebody got his name and found out that he had 2 sexual offenses against a 12-year-old and 13-year-old girl. So it wasn't that the mom was like, oh, he's not paying rent. It was, she didn't want him to be screened because she didn't want the landlord to know about the sexual offenses. And that could be a liability for you. And that's why we recommend screen everybody, right? That way the landlord knows who's residing in the property, and they know like what each person's bringing to the table. Because if you have a husband and wife, and let's say the wife is making all the money, and the husband doesn't have any money, any income, nothing, and then they get into an argument and the wife bounces, like, the person left is responsible for the entirety of the rent. So this is information that the landlord should know when they're making their initial decision. When the tenant's ready to move forward, they're just going to hit next step, and they just start filling out. You'll see that it is applying for your company, and they're just going to fill out the basic information: name, social security, date of birth, address, etc. If they don't have a social, just note, again, you can always send them over to us to help them through it, but just note, if they don't have a social, they can always enter in zeros. If you're using this as a pre-screening tool and they don't know where they're going to apply yet, they could enter in your office address here. And if they don't know what rent amount they're going to pay, they could always put in what they think they want to pay for the rental, right? As far as social security number, I don't know if you saw, but recently in Bucks County, there was a lawsuit because there was a husband and wife that applied for an apartment. The husband met the rent to income qualifications, and he also met the credit screening, but the wife was from Colombia and didn't have a social security number, and the apartment complex denied both of them because she didn't have a social. The couple ended up filing a lawsuit, I think, and it went to court, and in Pennsylvania they found that that was discrimination, actually the apartment complex now has to pay them a $450,000 settlement. So they're probably going to buy a house now. So you should hit them up and see if they're if they want to buy. So Juliana just wrote, so even if you do not have a social, you can apply. What will come up? Great question. So if somebody puts in zeros because they don't have a social, then there is a rule in the system that if there's no credit on file, then they will start at a 70 out of 100 on the NTN scale. So basically, we don't know if they're a good pay. We don't know if they're a bad pay. We just don't know. So they're going to end up mid-range, and it's up to the landlord to make the decision. But you do want a way to process everyone, right? They should, even if they're not from this country, if they're moving here, they should still go through an application process. They should still apply the same way that everyone else does, right? Just they don't have a social security number. So again, it would be a 70, and it's up to the landlord to make the decision. But that no credit rule is for not only people who move here from overseas, but that would also kick in. Let's say if there's a new student that's starting out, a lot of times they don't have credit established, and FICO will say NA, or not enough credit on file, we can't give them any score. With NTN, again, it would kick in and say, well, there's 70, no credit on file. It's up to the landlord to make the decision. So, it's up to the landlord to make the decision. So I had an agent say they reached out to you, NTN, and the response was, if you do not have an SSN, you can't apply. That's not true. No one in our office would ever say that. That is not the case. We always will allow a tenant, if they don't have a social, to put in zeros for that. Most of the people too that work at NTN have been there longer than me, and I've been there for 10 years. So, and they all trained me. So it would be, I can't imagine anyone in our office who would say that. How is pension and SSI reflected as income on your report? So it's other income they can enter in. So if they do have any kind of other pension or Social Security, or if they have, a housing choice voucher, anything like that, that will be in the other income section, along with alimony and child support that they can enter. So basically what happens is you'll send this link to the tenant, and the big thing is to ask them just to notify you once they've completed the application. So because they are applying online, they're not going to turn any documents into you. So it's always good to ask them, just notify me once you've completed the application, right? Because you might send them the link on a Friday and they might not get to it till Monday. So, have them contact you. Once they contact you, the only other thing you need in this attachment is the request form. And the way we have it set up is that you're going to be working directly with NTN every time you need a report. As I mentioned, they process reports every single day of the week, and you should be getting things back same day, probably within like an hour to 3 hours max. And if you send it at like 11 o'clock at night, you'll probably have it at 6 a.m. the next morning. So they're pretty good about getting the reports out. Basically, what you would do is when you're ready to get the report on that specific tenant, you would just put in your name, your telephone number, the email address where we should send the report to. You're going to let us know the applicant's name, the rent amount. If they do have a subsidy that you know about, you can check that off. Let us know. And then what we do is we ask you to create a case sensitive password that has to follow these requirements. You can keep it the same every single time, but you could do something like right? It's 2, 4, 6, 8, uppercase, lowercase, 8 characters, a number and a symbol. You can keep it the same every single time, or you can change it if you want to be complex every time. What happens is we will process the report. We will send it back to your email address. And then in order to open up the email address, it's going to prompt you for your email address. So it should match the same email address, and whatever password you created is going to be the password that will be used to open up the report. Once you get the report, it's going to look something like this. It's going to be the decision point report. It's going to have the rental recommendation. It's going to have a rent to income analysis that's done. It's going to have an applicant score. It's going to confirm the information on here. Any confirmed housing court records will be on here if a tenant didn't pay the landlord in the last 7 years and we're able to report it. This is all goes by law. There's certain records that are sealed per New Jersey that we cannot report, but otherwise it will be on there as long as it's reportable. And this is the report that would go to the landlord. So the landlord would have to make the initial decision off of this. You will see the credit score on here. This is a soft inquiry, by the way. There is no full credit report in here. Now, this is something that's different with NTN. We don't provide the full credit report. And the reason for that is because it's just a lot of information these days with identity theft that you don't want to be responsible for. I had an agent in Long Island last year. She took a tenant out, showed her an apartment. She was screened through NTN. She moved in, and then a week before Christmas, she turned around and hired an attorney, tried to sue the agent because she said that her credit cards had all been hacked into, and the only person who had access to her full credit report was the agent. So that's how she knew the agent did it. And in that case, the broker wrote a letter back to the attorney saying, here's a sample of the report we get. Our agents don't get access to the line by line details, and they don't get access to the full social. They don't have any sensitive information. So please explain to me how you think my agent stole this information. And in that case, the attorney never came back. So this report is what would go to the landlord to make the initial decision. If they decide to move forward and they say, okay, we're going to give the conditional offer letter and do the supplemental application, and you're ready for that criminal report, you just go right back to your request form. And the only thing you're going to do is click on this button to add the multi-state criminal report. So you're basically letting us know that the conditional offer letter has gone to the tenant and you're ready for us to release this to you. So then you'll get the full criminal report. Here, the multi-state criminal report will come through for you in that case. And then you'll be able to see everything and send that over to the landlord for them to make the final decision. It looks like there's another question in here. How do you know who was at fault in a court filing? So usually the court filings will tell you that something happened. It doesn't necessarily tell you exactly what happened, but it's just basically flagging the landlord to let you know something happened. Now in New Jersey, they just had a new data law policy that went into effect in May. I think it was May 1st. Where any records from New Jersey they're sealing certain records, and it's the records that were not a judgment for possession. So if it wasn't a judgment for possession, then they're sealing those records. But then the judgment for possessions are what we're allowed to report in New Jersey. For other states, they allow us to report the record. So at that point, if there was a question, that would be something that the landlord would have to probably question the applicant. Or if they have a question, the landlords could probably reach out directly to NTN, and we'll try to, as a courtesy, try to look up as much information as we can. But sometimes the courts are notorious for not updating records as much. So. But, a lot of times landlords will look at that, it's more of it seems to be more of a red flag if it's something recent, if they're looking to get into this apartment really quick and then all of a sudden you see, okay, they didn't pay their rent, October and November, then that might be more of a red flag. Or if they have, like I had somebody who had a 780 FICO score, she made over $120,000, but she had 12 confirmed eviction filings with 3 different landlords in the last 3 years. That's something that's more alarming. If it was one filing from 6 years ago, most landlords will probably look at that, maybe question what happened. And, it could have been something where the landlord maybe didn't fix something or didn't do something that the tenant wanted. And, it's important for the landlords to at least be aware that something happened, especially because a lot of landlords still do. Sometimes they do like landlord references. And I hear all the time the landlords will call me and say, oh, I called the previous landlord and they said they were, great tenants. How come there's like 5 filings to evict them? And, when you do those landlord verifications, if the tenant's not working out, the landlord's probably going to tell you they're wonderful tenants just to remove them from the property. So. Also, we do provide as part of our report, the OFAC. This is the terrorist watch list. So the government says you're not to enter into an agreement with a terrorist, or there's a fine, jail time, or loss of license. So we do cross-check the OFAC report. And then I did mention a couple times about this adverse action letter. So in the event somebody scores in the conditional or the reject range here, there is a letter that will be produced. It'll say view adverse action letter. And this is a letter that gives full disclosure to the tenant as to the denial. So to let them know that, uniform criteria was applied objectively, and unfortunately their application was denied due to, the reason will always be a reason not having to do with any protected characteristics, only things a landlord could legally deny for, along with who they can contact if they want to dispute anything or if they want to open up a reinvestigation, along with credit information. So the Dodd-Frank says that anytime you treat somebody adversely, you do have to let them know what their score is, what the range of possible scores are, what factors affected their score, what date it was run, and what agency ran it. So those are things that, should be disclosed and must be disclosed. Otherwise, you could be sued for non-disclosure. So, or non-compliance by the Federal Trade Commission. So we do put all of this into the letter. This is what would be used if there was a denial based on anything minus criminal. If there was a criminal denial that took place, that's when the withdrawal notice is used instead. But again, we have the step-by-step that should walk you through this. Just a couple more things when it comes to the income. This is coming from their application. We do ask the tenants to put in what their gross monthly income is, and we ask them to certify that everything they entered was true and accurate. So either you or the landlord might want to ask for proof of income. Just make sure that they are making what they say they are, and they can provide proof. You're not asking source. You're just asking proof of income or proof of lawful income so that they can prove what they're putting on the report. Also with the identity, we'll to let you know whether they have a credit report, whether the social matched, and the applicant information at the top, but it is good to always ask for proof of identity, either you or the landlord again, proof of identity or government issued photo ID to make sure the person who is on the report is the person you're working with. I had an agent who never checked ID and her landlord didn't check ID. They just took the report, moved them in, and they didn't pay rent. They didn't know who was living on the property. I had another agent who ran a report, asked for ID, got somebody else's ID, and she asked, why is the report somebody else? Why is it a different name? And the tenant said, oh, my credit's not that good, so I thought I could use my friend's information. Meanwhile, it wasn't even a friend. She had stolen somebody's social, and that lady filed a police report on her. So you do want to check the ID. And in New Jersey, there is an attorney who recommends using the broad umbrella terms. So she said, if you've been an agent for 20 years and you're used to saying, oh, I need your driver's license and 2 most recent pay stubs, she said you might want to get away from asking for that because, you know, if the person, let's say, has a disability, so they can't drive and they don't work, they get disability income, they might turn around and say they felt discriminated against, that they couldn't apply for the property because you asked them specifically for those documents and they don't have them, they felt they couldn't apply. So using the broad terms like proof of identity or government issued photo ID encompasses a driver's license, a non-driver's license for ID purposes, a passport, and then lawful proof of income or proof of lawful income covers not only a pay stub, but it also covers alimony, child support, social security, disability, unemployment, housing choice voucher, all of that's covered under there. And then the only other thing I just want to mention is that our reports are used pretty widely in New Jersey, and what we have noticed is an uptick in the amount of falsified reports. So if you ever get a report from the tenant or from an outside agent or from an outside broker, always take 2 seconds and call our office at the 800 number. You can give us the order number at the top of the report, and we will actually confirm whether or not what you're seeing is accurate. So at this point, I've had not only applicants, but agents who, were trying to get their tenants in and they changed FICO scores, like just, Photoshop or whatever on a copy machine. They've removed housing court records. I had somebody remove a 5-page criminal history. And then in one case, I had a broker in New Jersey that changed a report to try to get herself into an apartment. So, anytime you receive it, if you didn't run it yourself, you can accept it, provided it's within the last 2 months. But I always recommend call NTN and just make sure it wasn't doctored up. Just a couple weeks ago, I had somebody who took our sample report off of our website and tried to doctor it up so it looked like an actual NTN report, but that report is 20 years old. So it didn't even look like a true NTN report. And just 2 weeks ago, I have 2 different situations where tenants brought in a copy of a report and they had changed all their information. The agents accepted that report, gave it to to the listing agent. Listing agent never checked the reports. Landlord moved the tenants in. They didn't pay rent. And now the landlord's going after both agencies for not checking the information. So really the falsified reports is an issue right now. And you want to make sure that if you didn't run the report yourself, that you call us to make sure that it's actually a valid document. So I think I've talked my head off and I probably won't be able to speak anymore, but if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
I just want to start by saying thank you because I personally learned so much today. And I was just texting with Juliana. I think we might require all of our new patients to watch this front to back. So thank you so much for all of that. But yeah,
Okay.
interested in any questions also, but oh my God, so much was covered.
My pleasure. I'm just sorry you had to listen to my weird voice.
I have a question. This applies for all rentals, even luxury rentals,
Even which rentals?
luxury rentals? I mean, does it apply for every rental that we're doing? Every apartment rental, residential?
Every residential. Residential is what it should be used for, yes. If you have
Regardless whether
commercial,
it's somebody, a luxury apartment, doesn't matter.
For Danny, I think you're talking about maybe for like the owner pays, and they run their own background and credit check, so you don't have to worry about it. But if you're applying,
Okay.
if you had somebody applying for anything on the MLS, or even a landlord, you're working with somebody, say you find on Craigslist, whatever the case may be, outside of the owner paid is where you would use NTN.
Gotcha.
yeah, and even with your landlords, just if they're going to use their own system, just make sure that they know about the New Jersey Fair Chance and Housing Act, because we're one of the only screening companies that are actually providing a solution, and a lot of other ones just either stop doing criminal altogether, or they're not providing any solution. So you want to make sure that you're helping your landlords as well to stay compliant. Most of the large luxury buildings, though, should have an attorney on staff that's going to make sure that they're compliant, but you never know. So what could happen, Lauren, is maybe in like another 2 months or so after you start using the system, maybe bring me back, and then I can go over and like just do a Q&A anytime you need it, if people start getting stuck or they have questions or there's concerns.
Sure, yeah. That'd be awesome, yeah.
Yep.
Everybody, I assume everybody, I'm hoping everybody will be into that. I'm into it. Does anybody else have any questions? Okay, I'm gonna go with no. So again, appreciate your time. This recording is going to be on everybody's Google Drives, but once it's fully downloaded, it takes a while usually. I'm going to email it to everyone as well. So and if you have any other questions, text or email me anytime.
And I'll send you the the documents and the link and everything, but I'll also send you the slide deck so that you have it.
Awesome. Thank you, Elizabeth.
No problem.
Thanks, everyone.
See you.
Thanks.